1 check. Tower phase 2-1. Hold short 158.
Here's an example of a rolling interval takeoff. As number 2, I will maintain my primary responsibilities to not hit number 1, keep number 1 in sight, be in position on frequency, clear for the formation, and back up number 1. As we approach the hammerhead and we're cleared for takeoff, I double check winds, weather, make sure that we're not line up and wait, and we are in fact cleared for takeoff, and ensure that checklist discipline is a priority. As number 1 takes the left side of the runway, I will take the right side of the runway, look in the distance at the captain's bar, and begin to advance my PCL to max, ensuring lineup checklist complete. I will check my expected torque, keeping the center line as a brick wall, rotate normally, and deconfigure. I will glance at my own aircraft to ensure that I have completed my after takeoff checklist, as well as looking for number 1's configuration. Keep the power at max, knowing that number 1 is accelerating to 160 knots. I will trail behind number 1 for the join up and treat it like a straight ahead rejoin. With number 1 at 160 knots, I want at least 180 knots to complete the join up. As I see the pitot tube, I'll jink to the left, approximately 4 ship widths to the left of number 1. Align my fuselage and reduce power at the same line of sight as he is moving on the windscreen. As I hit the line, I will utilize power, aileron, and rudder input to move to the close formation position. As I move to the close formation position with fingertip, I bracket the exhaust stack between the trailing edge position light and the pitot tube. For spacing, approximately 10 feet, number 1's horizontal stab and rudder hinge are aligned. Note the weather while climbing out on departure. Stack, line, spacing. To correct the stack and elevator input is required. Line and spacing are both aileron and power. Power corrections usually require 3 PCL movements. 1 to start the correction, 1 to stop it, and finally 1 to stabilize the aircraft in proper position.
Thank you.
As I move to the route position, I clear left, looking for 2 ship widths to 500 feet, and line abreast to no further aft than the 6 aspect or fingertip line. 2 ship widths looks as though number 1 is as wide as the wingtip. When you're out at 500 feet, the tail flash RA will become blurry. En route, maneuverability, clearing, and visual lookout are all enhanced. Additionally, in-flight checks, radio changes, other cockpit tasks are easier to complete. Check over your aircraft, look at your nav aids, back up number 1. Smart route. If I'm anticipating a turn towards me, I will fall aft and increase my distance. For turns away, move closer to 2 ship widths and line abreast. This is about as far aft as I would ever be. To close the gap, keep your power up and aileron towards number 1. At the same time, keep them on the horizon. A ready for anything posture en route is putting the strobe in the exhaust. As I get closer to number 1, I reduce power as necessary and look for visual signals. Cross under. Reduce power half knob width. Nose down slightly. When I see forward line of sight and the tie-down strap in the exhaust, I add power to stabilize. Right aileron. As I see the tie-down strap in the exhaust on the other side, I add power and move forward and climb. Back to fingertip. A cross under can be directed visually or via the radios. It's like changing lanes on a highway. Your power movement should be commensurate with your aileron movement, just as such with accelerating and using the steering wheel. In a climb, a smaller power reduction is more logical. Climb checklist ops check. Clear left, bid left. Simultaneously check O-box pressurization and complete a HEFO. Watch for hand signals and repeat high in the canopy. Once the checklist is complete, get back into close formation. As briefed, expecting a practice loss wingman. Envisioning myself in the weather, 180 knots level flight. Get out of position slightly. When losing sight, simulated. Turn 15 degrees of bank, 15 seconds while transitioning to instruments. After 15 seconds, level the wings, look for number 1, call visual. While maintaining standard formation, utilize power and flight control inputs as required to trail number 1. Be at least outside of view of the pitot tubes. Never call ready for a straight ahead rejoin, wait for the rejoin signal. After the rejoin signal, select max power and establish 20 to 30 knots of overtake while keeping number 1 slightly above the horizon. When you see the pitot tubes, you're approximately 500 feet away. Jink to the left side, approximately 4 ship widths. Align your fuselage. And utilize power as required at the same rate of aft line of sight in the windscreen. Once on the fingertip line, aileron towards number 1, and power is required to stabilize it. When number 1 porpoises the aircraft, you're directed to tactical. Select max power bit away from number 1 to achieve line abreast and 2,000 to 3,000 feet spacing. Placing number 1 just in front of the wingtip and making the aircraft the size of the flash guard will achieve correct position. If you're in the rear cockpit, use the trailing edge of the wing. When number 1 directs a rejoin in tactical, I select more power and bank towards number 1 to achieve very small line of sight forward. Airspeed, I know he's at 200. I'll be approximately 210 knots. And I won't check the airspeed inside of 1,000 feet. Only using visual cues to ensure safe separation. Once on the rejoin line, utilize a little bit of bank away from number 1 to stabilize and use power as required to reform.